Hey guys, this story is widely known amongst my family and it's constantly brought up and joked upon in my group of friends even years later. A buddy of mine suggested that this is the perfect place to make it public, so let's get into it. Backstory: I was a senior in high school at the time and I had never been the brightest student. I was a solid C student and I had never received that attention or had any kind of bad student record. This is important because to this day, I still have no idea why the teacher treated me this way. The teacher, who we will name Miss Frank, has been a teacher there for more than a decade and was widely known for being a petty, heartless jerk who the administrator saw as the golden child. Miss Frank taught algebra, which is my worst subject, so naturally I had issues understanding the lessons and would ask questions frequently. To some, these questions are easily answered, but to me it was rocket science. Usually when someone asks a dumb question, no one should address it. However, in Miss Frank's case, she would belittle me in front of everyone by saying things such as, "And here comes the slow boy again. Wow, surprise, surprise. You don't understand it again. Really, we have to go extra slow for you today, don't we?" etc. etc. I tried going to the administration about it before, but again she was considered the golden child. They would send someone in to examine her during class. She would act respectful and normal for one day and go back to being a jerk the next. This goes on for about half the year until I had enough. I went to the local radio shack, bought a recorder, and secretly recorded every insult she would throw at me. I would sometimes instigate to make up for the lost time. Go ahead, feed the fire. Fast forward to the end of the year, and I'm sitting in Mrs. Frank's class when I ask a question. Her response, and I quote because it's burned into my brain, was, "I've been teaching here for over 10 years, and that was the single dumbest question I've ever heard come from anyone's mouth." She continued the lesson without answering. I calmly set up, packed up my stuff, and headed to the nurse's office to dismiss myself from school. We were allowed to dismiss ourselves if we were 18. I went home, compiled all the brutal tapes into one glorious masterpiece, and headed back the next day to show the administrators. I sat down with the principal, and we listened to a couple of the insults before he stopped me. He wanted more witnesses present, as well as Miss Frank's. He told me we would meet the next day, records show him and the rest of the administrators the full tape. I walk into school the next morning being the most nervous I've ever been for anything. I was called down to the office where I met with some board directors, the local school police officer, the principal, the vice principal, and Miss Franks. What follows was some of the greatest minutes of my life. I watched as the administrators went from fed up with being in another useless meeting to furious and speechless, with some of them keeping their mouths open for the duration of the tape. I also watched Miss Frank go from confident and stuck up to her, realizing that she had messed up beyond repair. She was publicly roasting herself in front of the most important people from the district. The tape ended, and without hesitation, the administrators looked around in astonishment, and the principal turns to me and says, "I think we have heard everything we need to thank you." And I was quietly dismissed from the room. The final time I saw Miss Frank was leaving the room. I looked back and we made eye contact through her tear-filled eyes as I gave the biggest, most evil smile. I returned to class the next week and Miss Frank was nowhere to be found. The story spread quickly throughout the school and I was seen as a saint. I had successfully gotten her fired and made it almost impossible for Miss Frank to return to her teaching career, as well as cut off most of her connections she had with other teachers in the school. I had ruined her financially because no school district in the area would hire this walking piece of garbage. If you're reading this, Ms. Frank, I'd like to take this moment to tell you to go F yourself. This story was posted by Johnny Provolone and I'm speaking to you, Johnny Provolone. If you're out there and if you still have those tapes, I will do anything to get those tapes. I would love to listen to those tapes and put them into a video, and to everyone else. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, because if Opus does give me permission to use those tapes, you'll definitely want to be here to listen to them. Next story. A few months back, as you all may remember, Florida got pretty beaten up by a couple of hurricanes. My folks lived down there, and while none of the damage that they sustained was life-altering, these horrible or home-destroying homeowners insurance kicked in and they had some water damage through the roof. They also needed a new one because of all the shingles that had come off and debris that had punctured it. My folks looked through roofing options and determined that a metal roof would be a great option to reduce damage and maintenance on their home. Plus, it would serve as a more energy-efficient option with passive solar collection and fewer thermal losses in the summer and winter. It's more expensive, but my dad was basically our personal finance incarnate while I was growing up. He's in his 60 seconds and has finally concluded that he has FU money so long as that community is concerned. So the roof was a good investment and looked like a win-win-win with that roof. Then they reviewed the HRA and saw that as of 1989, metal roofs are prohibited in the neighborhood, subject to fines and mandatory removal. Reviewing the bylaw further showed that it was clearly referring to older, worse tin roofs, not a proper metal one like today's market value provides, which looks great and has all of those other benefits. My folks wanted to play by the rules, though, and called up the ATO to explain the situation was friendly and said that they would be looking into that bylaw, and that my folks weren't the only ones who requested that they be allowed to have a metal roof. My parents couldn't get a roofing contractor in for a few months anyway. Too much demand, since everyone else's roof got wrecked, so they waited a few weeks and got nothing new out of the way. Tried again a few weeks later. Nothing. After 2 months of this, they set effort and started construction on the metal roof. Popular opinion in the neighborhood was on their side and the roof was covered with a tarp that wouldn't last forever. The new roof canceled over the course of a few days and then we found out the H0AS shadiness. The neighborhood has a nice brick sign out front that says, "Welcome to the neighborhood name." It's very classy, very nice, and was very damaged in the hurricane. The HRA was strapped for money due to other repairs and dues, and some prick had the right idea to impose as many fines as they could on the neighborhood to pay for these repairs. Starting with my folks, they served my folks with a letter claiming that they were in violation of the HRA and demanded a $25,000 fine and that they remove it, which is of course absurd. My poor mother is very much a play by the rules sort and she was worried sick. Dad's ex-Navy and a contract negotiator. He has since checked his 60-year-old knuckles and said, "Oh, you little jerks want to play, do you?" So they set about researching and making some calls. Poor mom kept waking up at 1 a.m. unable to sleep and I felt terrible for her as she went through this. But then they had a breakthrough a few weeks after being served. I'm fuzzy on the timeline since I don't live in Florida, it may have been less. There was essentially a burn them at the stake meeting at the archway where my parents could defend themselves for an absurdly short amount of time and the ATO could rip into them for daring to defy their wrath. So my mom, because she's more social and has a better temper than dad, comes up to speak and lets the "we know that they can't do this" HLA smirks and says that they sure can. They have a 40-year-old statute saying that they can. Mom says you do, but I have state law on my side, which supersedes your statute. Turns out there's a law in Florida stating that an HRA or really any regulation cannot be used to prevent an eco-friendly improvement from taking place on anyone's private property. And wouldn't you know it, the passive solar of the metal roofs counts as an eco-friendly improvement. Turns out the roofing contractors have dealt with similar stuff before. When Dad mentioned what was going on to them, the contracting officer pulled out a few letters of accreditation and a few past cases where the court had determined that their product was eco-friendly and forced the HCA to pay all legal fees. My mom produced all of this for the sucky away, who had to admit that this was in fact ironclad. Strapped for money as they were, they couldn't afford to pay a lawyer who had growls. Is that all? Mom turns up the sweetness to 11. No, I see in the bylaws that we can vote to impeach board members at any H2A meeting and to elect their replacements. I move to impeach all of you. I nominate my husband and she rattles off a list of names. HK is stunned. While Dad looked into the legal, Mom looked into the new neighborhood. Popular opinion was on their side and the hearing was public for the neighborhood. Mom convinced a majority of the homeowners to attend and remove the board for their sucky policy. With that, my parents are now on the all-new board. My dad is putting out his contract negotiation skills and his own craftsmanship skills to work. Repairing the front entrance and metal roofs are now allowed by the all-new age. Okay, this is a pro-revenge couple, it's a 12 punch. The husband deals the damage and the wife recruits an army. I love this couple. I work as a train driver. I drive smaller trains, mostly out on the countryside. And people are generally nice and well-behaved. But of course, there are also the alcoholics, drug addicts, and general weirdos that uses public transport and some people that just lives to be a pain in the butthole. This was a few years ago. We were traveling in the late afternoon and my conductor, let's say C, storms into the driver's cabin, angry and annoyed, and tells me we have 2 rude good-for-nothing guys on board. And they're such buttholes. What did they do? They have no tickets, refuse to pay, just laughs up at my face, and are saying, "What are you going to do about it? What the hell should I help you throw them off at the next stop?" We can't, because they're just traveling one station, so they're getting off at the next stop. God dang smug guys with their, "What are you going to do about it?" So we're both angry. I let the conductor rant and let off some steam. Next stop comes and the guys get off. The conductor angrily gestures at them, that's them buttholes. We continue the short remaining journey and have a break at the end station. Some hours later, the train then goes back. Since it's on the countryside and it's a late weekend evening, the train is almost empty on the way back. The conductor knows where every passenger on board is getting off, and she's up at the front with me chatting. And all is fine again until we approach the station where we let those guys off. We see 2 people standing there. It is them. My conductor beside me shines up like a goddamn sign. She says with a bigger smile on her face, "Do not stop." And I'm just laughing, slowing the train down. Not stopping, though. When we pass them, the conductor opens the window, waves, and says loud and happily, "This is what I've got to do about it." The guys are just staring at her with their jaws on the ground when we drive past them. We laugh all the way to our home destination. We were the last train for the day. And if that story wasn't already juicy enough, we've got more. Edit. I wrote in the comments that we encounter these guys again a few weeks later. I posted here as well because these guys did not learn the first time. They apparently got on at the same station like last time, but we didn't notice them. They had plans to travel further than last time, but when the conductor went out to check the tickets, it went like this. A conductor spots them, recognizes them, says loudly among the other travelers, "Oh, are you able to pay for your tickets today?" They just fidget and say, "No, we ain't got no money." Well, ain't that a shame? Guess you have to get off at the next stop. What the F? Can't you be nice and let us be? What the F are we going to do with that stupid station? Guys, I don't give a F, you're going off this train and you can walk to the next station, and I'm calling the train behind us, so they won't pick you up either. They got off the other train, called us later because they saw the guys walking on a forced path along the railway track. And I haven't seen these guys since. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? This is what I'm going to do about it. This is a comment from another thread about a job where I and about 200 other guys were promised and earned bonuses. The company was a financial service firm known for paying well, but one year they decided they'd withhold bonuses. This is how I handled it. OMG, I went through something similar. In 2000 I was working for a financial firm, 18 employees with a sales force of 200. I was one of the salesmen. We had our annual meeting in April. It was a big affair. Most of the employees attended and the CEO gave a big speech about how the previous year was the best in the company's history. Blah, blah, blah. The next month, May, we submitted memos basically justifying why we qualified for or should qualify for bonuses at the end of June. I wrote my note and explained the sales growth in my territory over the course of the previous 12 months and what percentage of my sales were out of last year's total sales coming off the company's best year ever. It should have been a slam dunk, right? All of us were excited about how much we'd have coming in June. June rolls around and my bonus is 0-0, but it's not just me. It's all over. The sales for less than 20% of the sales force got bonuses, and holy cow, everyone was pissed. All the supervisors were dealing with angry subordinates. The sales manager was too, and even the VP and director above him. Everyone was furious and insubordinate. Angry, accusatory emails were flying, and the company was facing a mutiny. It got worse when it came out that the supervisors were offered bonuses that they could determine for themselves. Most of them took them, but a couple, knowing their subordinates wouldn't be getting anything, refused. My supervisor took his. When it came out, he tried to explain to his sales team about how he felt it was justified and how hard he worked. He ended up with people screaming at him about how they felt the same, but they didn't get jack. So for a week or so, things on the floor came to a stop. A lot of people just didn't show up, and the ones that did were angry. I came in and started reading Monster.com ads at my desk. I also stopped selling anything or answering my phone when confronted by my boss. I told him that as soon as I got the bonus, my sales justified, I'd start working again. Until then, I'd be coming in late, reading and responding to want ads, and leaving early. He could expect me to keep that up until I found another job or was fired. The following day, I was into the regional sales manager's office. She said she'd heard about my work stoppage and asked me to explain myself. I told her that if she heard about it from my supervisor, then she already knew why I wasn't working and I didn't need to explain it again. She tried, buddying up to me, being friendly, then being stern, then being angry. I kept my composure and told her that the longer the company held out on my bonus, the longer it was going to miss out on sales for my territory. I then gave her my average daily amount of sales from the previous year, quantified what the total loss would be for a week of me not selling, and how much cheaper it would be just to pay me the money I was owed and get back to selling. Then I thanked her for her time and told her I'd be leaving work as soon as I left her office. And I did. The following day I came in and checked my emails, some of which were farewell emails from co-workers who quit over their stolen bonuses and sat on monster.com until I was told to go to the office of the national sales manager. He's the gatekeeper. He's in charge of all 200 of us. He told me he understood that I was upset and could see why. I asked him of withholding the bonuses from 80% of a sales force was his idea or someone else's. He didn't answer. He did tell me that I would be getting a check on Monday, and could I please go back to work now? I told him I'd be going back to my desk, but wouldn't start until the check was in my hand. When I went back and checked my emails, yet more defections. The next day an email went out to the entire sales force. Management had taken a look at the numbers. We evaluated the financials and determined that June bonuses would be issued shortly. The email also apologized for the delay and reminded us that as salesmen, we were the core of our company and our hard work was appreciated. I also received another email, this time from the national sales manager, who told me while bonuses were scheduled for Monday, he'd be walking my check to my desk the following day. The following day I showed up, sat down, and shortly afterwards the national sales manager walked on up and handed me my bonus check. I thanked him and handed him my resignation, effective immediately. In my resignation letter, I requested that a check for my unused vacation time please be cut and given to me before I left the building. When he finished reading it, I told him I'd clean out my desk while I waited for the vacation check. While I was doing that, one of my coworkers also resigned, effective immediately. We were walked out at the same time and ended up getting drunk at the bar across the street. I learned later from coworkers that remained that even though the company issued the bonuses, they lost about 20% of the sales force in the following 2 months. Got to love corporate greed. Corporations like this make no sense to me. They cut the bonuses because they wanted to save money and increase profits. But the amount of money, so shut up, sit down, get to work, and don't expect any payment. That was our slice of pie revenge. And I'm going to make an effort to see if I can get my hands on those tapes from the teacher. I don't know if it's going to work, but if it does, you should definitely subscribe so that you can see that video when it comes out because, oh, those tapes sound so juicy.